Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I'm your host, Wendy Corner, and this podcast is for you. If you are an author, you've got your page, maybe you've already gone onto stage, and you can share your insights and learn from the people that we're interviewing with both sides, page and stage. Maybe you started on the page and went to the stage. Maybe you started on the stage and went to the page. Or the other alternative is you've got your page, but you're not quite sure about the stage bit yet. So this is for some inspiration for you. And also come and join us on the virtual couch, if you will. And we'll come and join us for an aspirational conversation. Give yourself that opportunity of having a one-on-one conversation, because you can do a one-on-one conversation. And yes, this is public speaking. Welcome. So if you are in any of those categories, you're in the right place. Okay, well, today I have the joy and pleasure of introducing you to my friend Stuart Elliott, presently sitting in a beautiful part of the world
called Gwelin.
I will let him explain a bit more about it. I mean, I could wax lyrical about Stuart, but he knows himself better than I do. So Stuart, over to you. Give us a bit of an insight as to who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Well, as you can probably tell from my accent, I was born in the UK and I lived there until 86 and decided to do an overland trip through Africa. So I flew to South Africa. I spent 6 months driving from South Africa back to the UK with a group of people. I got off the ferry and I looked around and said, I don't like it. I'm going back. So 3 months later, I was back in Johannesburg in South Africa. And then I stayed there for 18 years. I did a lot of traveling around. I love the African bush and that type of life. And I've had so many interesting and enjoyable and sometimes scary experiences, but all fun. And then back in 2003, life fell apart, as it sometimes does, and I was offered the opportunity to come to the south of China, or no, to China, shall we say, to teach English as a second language. And I had one question: where, north or south? And they said, no, it's in the south. It's not that far from Vietnam. I said, no problem, I'm going, because I don't want to go to the cold, frigid wastelands of the north. You know, it's like the wastelands of Canada. Or maybe not wastelands, but you know what I mean. It's very cold. It's minus 40, minus 60. And that's not me. I like the sun. I like the warmth. So I came over here 2003. I'm still here. And I'm living in this beautiful city. The background is part of the scenery. This was taken in winter, so the river's a little bit lower. We've got quite a lot of floods. We just had a public announcement saying the river is going to be flooded, and further downstream, maybe 6 meters above the high water mark. So we're in that type of season where we get a lot of rain.
This is your rainy season, is it?
Yeah, it's one of the heaviest times of year for the rainy season. And we're getting a little bit more rain this year and seems to be getting a bit more flooding. But hopefully everyone will be safe. And, you know, it's part of living in the tropics, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. It's part of the cycle of life, really, isn't it? In terms of, as you say, living in the tropics, there are dry seasons, and there are very wet seasons.
Yeah, and this is part of the very wet season.
Yeah,
but it's nice because we get 2 crops of rice a year. You know,
oh right.
Most places only get 1 crop, but we get 2 crops because they planted in early February. Gets warm very quickly, the grass grows, and they plant the next crop just, you know, around June, July, and carry on until then. So it's good.
Cool. And is your rice a special sort of rice, the fact that you get 2 crops a year?
I don't know. I mean, there's rice is rice to me.
I
know basmati rice. And there's probably about 500 different varieties, but I don't know what they all are. Some are better than others. And some people say that northern rice from the cold areas because it is better. So I don't know, rice is rice. But it does vary in price.
Right.
So, you know, we have to be careful there. But,
so here you are in China, still teaching English as a second language?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I'm teaching my 2 young children, but I'm not doing it as a profession anymore.
Okay.
And that was an interesting progression, that helped me a lot in many things, because I taught English for about 15 years. And then just before my eldest was born, the school I was working at had moved from very, very young children up to sort of young adults and people who were doing business overseas. And because they had a higher level maturity and a higher level of English, the sessions became life coaching sessions. And that was beautiful because they were learning to communicate and converse in English. So that was the English part of it. But they had challenges they had to face, and they didn't know where to get answers. And I was there and I helped them to find answers. So when they made that transition inside, you could see the smile coming from the heart. I said, okay, this is what I am supposed to be doing. So I also transitioned from being an English teacher to being what I call a possibilities coach.
Possibilities coach.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Because life is full of possibilities, and we are full of them, and we don't know that.
Yeah, great. So now you were talking about the group of people, the demographic, if you like, that tipped you over into the possibility coaching.
Yeah,
as being mature.
More mature, because I was, when I first came here, I was working with kindergarten all the way up to, senior secondary school and people getting ready to go overseas for university. So the later school, it was more people who were getting ready to study or move overseas, or they were already doing business overseas and they needed a higher level of communication. So they were sort of young adults quite often.
Okay.
Even had a 70-year-old woman who was learning English, and that was interesting as well.
So what sort of age group are you aiming at now?
I find that midlife women are the people who relate to me more. And I found that in the classes, it was the women who were asking me questions. The guys are still locked, I think, in this, we have to get on with it type of thinking. And that's a shame because, we all have challenges. And we all lock away the possibilities because we focus on the problems.
And particularly in an Asian culture where productivity is king.
Yes, there's another challenge there.
Yeah. I know a number of people who've been molded by the societal conditioning.
Yeah.
And when they've rebelled from the classic doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Yeah.
What's the other one? Doctor, lawyer, engineer. It's 4 of them, the big 4. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, whichever. They've gone, this isn't me. And they've gone on to what they actually enjoy doing, apart from the fact that there's a family meltdown.
Yeah, that's another challenge.
Life.
The thing I found was when I was talking to a lot of the students, they were telling me about how they have to do follow the pathway type of thing. I said, well, what about being happy? And then there was deathly silence. That's not part of the picture. And eventually they would say, oh, well, that will happen when I retire. Yeah. So their conditioning is to study. And it causes a lot of stress and pressure, obviously, because you have to get a good grade to get to a good university, to get a good job, to get a good career. And if you're a guy, especially over here, to get a good wife, and then you get a good car, good house, and all these things. But there's no sort of consideration.
It's all external stuff, isn't it? It's all external stuff.
Consideration to you and being happy, because all those things will make you happy. Do they? I don't think so. They can help, but you can only make yourself happy, can't you?
Yes. And if you're really not enjoying what you're doing, then
that's it. Yeah.
It's not going to. It's a real shame, isn't it? That and I mean, it's not just in the Asian cultures, but in life in general. If we put off being happy until X, Y, Z happens, we can't be happy until then. Well, if I'm here, I'm going to wait that. Yeah.
It's a strange life, isn't it? And, one of the challenges that people have who have the thinking that I'm going to work hard and do all these things, and then when I retire, I'm going to be happy, they're burnt out. And now any money they've made goes into medical bills. And they're still not happy.
Yeah. And that's even if they get as far as retirement.
That's the other thing, isn't it?
That's not a given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As I know only too well. So yes, I mean it is a strange one, isn't it? And I absolutely honor you for being this possibility person.
Mm-hmm.
Asking those questions that makes people go, "Did you what?
Yeah.
There is another way."
It stops them in their tracks.
Yeah.
You can see they just do what? It blows their mind.
Yes.
Because there's always a way. I mean, if you think of it, when you maybe 10, 11, 12 months old, you suddenly decide, I can walk. You know you can. You don't doubt it. You just go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very challenging. And what a lot of people don't realize is that walking is one of the most difficult things that we can ever learn to do, because there's muscle coordination, there's balance, there's control, there's all different things that come into it. And yet we don't doubt we can. We just get up and we do it.
Yes.
And then when we get older, we dismiss that achievement.
Yes.
Everyone can walk. Well, guess what? Not everybody can. There's a lot of people who can't, and they would love to. But we dismiss it, and then we move more and more into I can't from I can.
Yeah.
And that's how we end up living most of our lives. And that's a shame.
And it's those internal scripts, as I call them, the things that we say to ourselves that really impact what we do experience in life. Yeah. Can I share with you a quote that I heard literally this morning? The stories we tell ourselves are the software our brains work on.
Yeah. And it's true.
I like that. That's a writer downer.
Yeah. And you think about it. What is controlling us? What is driving us? Is that inner story. And how many people are living in the world of I can't, and they don't know that if they add one little word, it will change that whole perspective.
Absolutely. Well, I mean,
that word is yet.
Yes, put it on the end, yet.
Yeah, yeah.
As you're saying this, as you remember in the introduction, there are some speakers who don't consider themselves speakers yet. Mm-hmm. The authors are going, my words have power. I've got that on paper. Mm-hmm. But you want me to stand up and speak? I'm not a public speaker. Mm-hmm. And that fills them with total dread. And I go, well, okay, what's your definition of public speaking? Mm-hmm. Well, there's a platform and a microphone, and you got to spout forth. And it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't. No, it's those redefinitions, isn't it? And as you're doing, it's just put a spanner in the works and go, it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
And when people appreciate that, if you can have a one-on-one conversation with somebody like we're doing now, well, this is called a podcast. Mm-hmm. And you can share what you're doing on a one-on-one conversation. It is a public speaking platform.
It is, and yet we don't recognize that, do we? That's the challenge. And I think for many people, public speaking, or the thought of public speaking, is one of the biggest fears they have in life. And you know, the thing is, we're always public speaking to our friends, but we don't see it because we've created this little definition, this very narrow definition, and that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. Another lady that we know in common said to me once, anytime I open my mouth with intention, I'm doing some public speaking.
Yeah, well, it's a very, very good way of looking at it.
And again, I thought, that's a writer downer. I've learned so many wonderful quotes from people when I've been doing this podcast.
Yeah. And, you know, before I came over here, I was afraid of public speaking. I was, you know, had an opportunity to get on stage once, not asked. It was like I was at a Herbalife meeting. I was going through that transition period before I left this South Africa. And I was in the audience and they said, we put a number on the chair. And we're going to call out the number and we're going to invite you to come to the front and share what's been happening. And I just knew at that moment, I knew it was going to be my number. And guess what? It was. And guess what? I didn't go up there. No way am I going up there. No, no, no. I'm not going to stand in front of this audience. And that's so I made a, sort of like a fool of myself, but I didn't make as big a fool as I thought I would have of myself if I'd have got up there. And yet when I came over here, my first introduction to the class was I came here and we had to sit around for a couple of weeks until everything was organized properly for us. And then this guy who was looking after us, he said, okay, we're going out to somewhere. And it just turns out it was a university, and we've been invited as guests on a public platform. There's about 500 students there. And they just
500 students.
Yeah, they just said, speak. What? I've no preparation, nothing. What the heck am I going to talk about? So very luckily, I had a quick idea. Let them ask me questions.
Good one. Good
questions. One. And then it was a beautiful interaction because they were asking questions and I was able to answer. There was no preparation. There was no fear.
Yes.
So it became a conversation. And that taught me a lot.
Yes.
It taught me a lot. But beforehand, when they said speak, it was like, ah, where's the toilet?
Quite. There's a wonderful quote from Mark Twain who said, it takes me 3 weeks to work up an impromptu speech.
Mm-hmm. I can believe it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, he was quipping, but the point is, if you have a label as a speaker, there will be times, even if you don't recognize it, there will be times when somebody literally hands you the mic and you've just got to get on with it.
Yeah.
So having that preparation of something you can talk about is always a good idea. But the idea of doing the Q&A, brilliant.
It just came because what the heck can I do? I didn't, I was not developed, I was not as mature as I am now. So, I didn't think about the stories of life and all these things I could tell people or share with people because that wasn't me. So I was thinking narrowly that I'm a teacher. What am I going to teach these universities? I don't even know who they are, where they are in their, education or anything else. So I just asked me questions and I was lucky. It worked. So sometimes we have to trust.
Yeah. Oh golly, yes. Because I mean, now you appreciate that you can pull on some of those stories from your time in Africa, which most people have not experienced, and they go, "You did what?"
Yeah.
And you can pull out then the lesson from that, and that's a great sort of story that you can tell, and still gets to the point that they may not have known if you hadn't told the gorgeous story around it.
Yeah, and there's so many things, everyday things that happen in our life that have that same importance once we start to realize it. So sometimes you have to put yourself in those positions to be able to grow into that understanding. And what I like to say to people, I mean, in the background, you can see there's a river. And I like to say that is our reservoir of wisdom. And we can drink into it anytime we choose to. Most people don't. They stay thirsty. So all the wisdom that they've gathered in their life is there waiting to be tapped.
And the wisdom that they've gained, often through hard knocks, is not just for them. There are other people who can benefit from that.
Yeah, you never know who is going to benefit from whatever story you share. And that's why I think it's important for everybody to be a collector and sharer of stories, because you don't know who needs to hear that one little thing in that story you heard 5 weeks ago or 5 years ago, or a sixth-hand story. It doesn't matter. There's that one piece of wisdom is someone is desperately in need of, and it can change their life.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you then, you're working on a book at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay. How long have you been writing? I mean, is writing something you've done from childhood? Because I know a lot of people, I say, when did you start writing? And they'll comment on the book, and I go, did you write before? I ran a poetry competition when I was 10, and I've written a stage play when I was 12, and I'm just wondering, were you prolific as a writer through school?
Not really. I mean, we had the English classes where we had to write an essay or something like that, you know. And I don't really know exactly when I started writing. I mean, I know I became more interested in copywriting and sharing messages, and also human psychology and thinking. I think I've always had that understanding from a very, very young age when I was very shy. And then my first job took me into people's houses, and I saw things that people should never see because I'm a tradesman. I was working for British Telecom, or Post Office Telecoms as it was then. And I was going there to fix phones or put phones in, and the things you see in people's houses, because they don't consider, a lot of people don't consider you as a person. You're a thing that comes in to do this job. So they don't become house proud. So you see many, many things. But also when I was a teenager and I was very shy, I was desperately waiting for people to come to me at parties and things and talk to me. I didn't realize that was actually a blessing, because I was learning how to observe, how to read, how to see people in ways that most people don't do. And that sort of has grown and carried me through when I got to over here, and that enabled me to be a very, very successful teacher. I mean, I had a kindergarten class of about 8 students, and they were about 4 or 5 years old, and I taught them anagrams of colors in English as a second language, and the teachers all told me it can't happen. I said, you watch. There was just no doubt. And it was so simple, because all I did, as I said, okay, this is the class, you're pigs. And they know pigs. They don't want to be pigs. So no. Okay, so what do you want to be? So kitty cat or whatever. So we write the name on the board, kitty cat. And then they say, you're monkeys. No. And then we got the same there. So then I've got them engaged. And now I did was, okay, what's this? And this is a flashcard. What color is this? Red. So the first group, I've just put a mark under the name. And then next color. And then I started counting how many are each there. And I made a point of not making either side longer than the other. So it's just stroke. We've got to count. So starting to learn to count passively in English as well. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I got the flashcards with a written word on the board. So red, yes, red, R-E-D, red. And then, we carried on like that. And then I'm counting again, and I'm making deliberate mistakes. So guess what happens? They correct me because they want to know who's winning. So they're learning to see and to understand. And we carried on, and then I took away the flashcards, and I took, just the names of the words. And then we moved on to D-R-E. What color is this? Red. So easy, because now they're already there. They're engaged in this game. And by that time, we got like 60, 80 strokes on the board. So now it's how many, and they're counting to about 80 without any problems. And if I make a mistake, they'll shout at me and correct me. It was such a rowdy class, but they learned so much.
Yes. Well,
and it's so easy because it was a game.
Exactly. Make it fun.
Yeah.
Because if you have things that are so hard, I mean, I'm going to share with you a bit of a tangent on my part. I've been training for years as part of my speech pathology work. And there was one time we were training, I did a 3-day, Partners in Communication was the name of the course. And we had carers of adults with intellectual disability who were the people coming to the course. And we were in one of those big training rooms that has a concertina petition. So we were on one side, and the other side were doing some other training. We coincided at tea break, and I actually had a complaint made against me because we were having too much fun.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, what are you learning? Catheterization. Oh, I said, I think I'm happier doing my bit. For those of you who are not familiar with what a catheter is, it's when you can't pee and they have to put a tube up the bit that pees.
You can make that fun.
We were having too much fun.
Yeah, you can make it fun if you wanted to, if you had a good teacher.
You certainly could. But they weren't seeing anything.
I had the same exact complaint. There was I was actually in a primary school, And it was a regular school. It wasn't a private English class. It was a regular school. And all the parents complaining, too noisy, too much fun. All the other teachers complaining. However, come the end of term, and they got the highest results in English ever, guess what happened? We want you back. We want you back. Come, come, come. They understood the result, but they couldn't understand the process, because school's not meant to be fun. Learning has got to be, that's how it is, unfortunately. And when you bring fun into it, people don't know they're learning because they're playing. And yet this is how we are as children, as people. The more we play, the more we learn.
Yes. Yeah.
Why do we have to separate it from education? To me, it's nonsense.
And even as adults, the more fun we can have, the more chances we are going to learn. And also, because we get stressed about things. I mean, classic case in point, me and maths. And mention anything to do with maths, and I immediately start to get a bit stressed. So my thinking gets clouded. Whereas if it can be made, as you did with the little e's, make it fun, make it a joke, make it a game, then I'm more likely to chill, relax, take it in. I can do this.
Because you're not learning, you're not focused on learning. You know, that's not even part of the equation. You're just playing.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, all your guard is gone, and the lessons that are there are picked up. But, unfortunately, teachers, they come in with this attitude, don't they, quite often? And that scares the heck out of the youngsters and even the older students quite often.
Yeah.
And
but
then
then
it goes down.
That's the way they've been taught. And if you think about it, certainly the Western education system came about during Victorian days to train good little workers at the other end.
Yeah, at the mills where I came from in Manchester.
Exactly. And some of the first schools were through the mills, weren't they?
Yeah, because there was no need for them before, until the technology started increasing. Then they needed a little bit more intelligence. Before that, you were just running around like a little rat amongst the looms, losing fingers, arms, legs, or whatever.
Yes. And
you were replacing them. So it was a big problem.
Yeah.
So it's fun is it makes such a difference in our lives. Why can't we have fun more? Why do we have to be miserable? And people don't realize that that's a choice that we make.
It's almost worn as a badge of honor as well.
Yeah.
Life's hard. It's as hard as you feel it is.
Yeah. And this is something else that, I talk to people about, and they look at me as I'm crazy. Celebrate your mistakes. I made a mistake. Yes. Why? Because that's how you grow.
Yes.
Go back to 11 months old when you were trying to walk, learning to walk. You fell over, bonk. Did you do anything wrong? No. And my eldest one, when she was there doing that, she stood up and she's balancing, she falls over, she gets up again. Yes. She's celebrating like that. It was so funny to watch.
Oh, good on her. Beautiful.
And, it didn't take her long to be able to walk around. And she starts running and, everything. That's what we do when we're younger.
And that's the thing, isn't it? Once we've got to the stage of we know what we're doing, then we put it to the back of our mind because it's in the unconscious success stuff. And therefore it's down into the subconscious. We don't think about it, and we forget that that took a bit of effort to learn.
Yeah, a lot of effort. The problem is, I find that societal conditioning focuses on mistakes.
Yes.
It focuses on being perfect. How many families with 2 or 3 or 4 children are they comparing the children? You're not as good as them. Oh, she's much better at this. But what about my strengths?
Yes.
That's ignored.
Yeah.
Because there's a focus on one thing only. And that limits people. It puts them into this world of limitation rather than the world of possibility.
And that I'm not good enough.
Yeah. And then we get the imposter syndrome and self-worth issues and all that nonsense that is created,
Yes.
usually from a very, very young age.
Yeah.
And here's another one that happens quickly. You start crying as a very, very young child. Your parents are concerned, so they rush over. What's wrong with you? Hello, what's the message? There's something wrong. This gets repeated many, many, many times throughout childhood. You go into a young adult as there's something wrong. I'm not complete. Wouldn't it be much nicer to say, okay, what's making you cry? Now there's nothing wrong with me. Something outside has made me cry. That's not a problem with me.
Yes, exactly.
But we don't understand that as parents, unfortunately, because no one teaches that.
Yeah, because that's what we've known. It's what we've had modeled. And when I was working as a speech pathologist, there was one gentleman I was working with who he had autism. He had Asperger's. He was very high level autistic chap. And he told me, I'm broken. I said, are you? Yeah. Who told you that? He said, all the way through school, I was told what I couldn't do. I said, well, look, forgive me, but you're doing a double major in maths and physics at one of the most prestigious universities in Western Australia. You is not broken, sunshine, because what you're telling me is going way over my head. He said, it's an alien language to me. You are not broken. But that took a long time and a lot of effort to gradually undo all the years of conditioning that he had had through school.
Yeah. It's shocking how that happens. It really is shocking.
Yeah.
And, you know, the focus is on mistake. Homework, what happens when you do your homework, you do an assignment, comes back, red crosses, lines through things. Where's the praise for what's good? Where's the, you know, this is brilliant type of thing?
Yeah.
It's a mistake, a mistake, a mistake. Nonsense. Nonsense.
And the thing is, we're hardwired to look for the negative anyway, and that just compounds it.
Yeah. So we look in the mirror and we see bad. We don't see good.
Yes, exactly. So you've got there's a book, Percolating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm halfway through it, and then I took a little bit of a break to do some more focus on imposter syndrome. And the book is about you as an individual and how you view yourself. And I titled it Discovering How to Fly, F-L-Y, with capital letters. And fly is first love yourself.
Love it. Love it.
Because that's where we go wrong. We don't value ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you value yourself, everything else just flows from there.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Do you have a rough aim date for publication?
I did, and then it got derailed. So now I'm looking at, I want to get it, and I have to get it finished this year, because otherwise it'll be 2025. And the problem is, if it's 2025, how many people am I denying possibility to by doing that? And then I'm a possibility coach, and yet I'm holding that back because it could be one person who will change their life for the better.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a gentleman, I think we both know him, Ken Caputo. I think you're aware of him. I was talking to him, or he was on a networking call, and he was talking about some work he was doing with some students about 16, 18 years old. And they were talking about valuing each other and just showing appreciation. And they were going through different exercises, just looking, but within, you know, an appreciative intention, et cetera, et cetera. And then a day or so or something later, one of the students came to him and said, you know, I was just getting on the school bus and there was another guy there, a different class, and he said, I just show him I appreciated him. And he just gave him that, you know, very, very nice look. And that guy had already that day decided to commit suicide because of a lot of challenges. And the fact that he showed he appreciated him stopped him. And it changed his life. And that's a story that I heard from, you know, third hand. But it just shows you don't know who is waiting to
Yes.
hear that one nugget. And there could be one word or one phrase in that book that I write
Yep.
that can change someone's life. And it's
Yeah.
the same for everybody, I think, that we don't know what we've got or who's waiting to hear what we've got. Let's get it out there and just share it. And then the right person will find it and it will change their life.
And that's the thing. Once the book is written, that's it to a certain extent. And then you take it to the stage. You tell people about it. Because
Yep.
one of the things that we've found is that, well, the book will go so far. And if you're, what tends to happen if you're part of a multi-author book, this is your solo book that you're thinking of, isn't
Yeah,
it?
this is, I have this challenge sometimes with some of the multi-author books where people say, I've got this book published. And they say that they're the publisher, they're the author. But hey, I'm an author is a bit more honest for me.
It is, and the book wouldn't be complete without them.
Yeah, but we've
So
got to frame it in the right way.
Suggest to them that yes, it is your book, because the book would not be complete without you. So own that. But yes, you're saying that. So you have this definition for yourself.
Yeah, I'm a contributing author in this highly successful #1 bestseller. It's not my book. I contributed, I've helped to make it grow, but it's not me.
Yeah.
That's my own little world.
So that's your definition on that one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that when people have been part of multi-author books, there's usually a big launch and people are expected to do some marketing around the launch. But very often after that, things go quiet because there's not the same impetus to talk about your book. Now, one of the guests that we've had on this show, she put out a solo book in 2017. It didn't hit #1 bestseller until 2023. And when I said to her, what was the difference? How come there was that lag period? Because usually there'll be the big splash for launch, and then things peter off a bit. Well, she said, well, the thing was I got onto every possible show I could. I talked about my book. I went, hello, there you go, poster girl for your From Page to Stage. So the thing is, once you've got your book, here we go, audience, I'm going to plug this again. Once you've got your book, it will go into the hands of so many people, but it will make even more impact when people hear you speaking about your book.
Well, that's why a lot of successful authors have a public launch and they sit there and they talk about it and people come and listen, don't they? Because it's important, because a lot of people buy a book and they never open it.
Yes. And the book launch is when people are reading from stage, as long as they are good readers, then it makes a real difference. The first book I was part of, and yes, it was a multi-author book, we had 6 authors who were based in Perth. It was an international book, but the 6 of us were based in Perth. So we hired out the lecture theatre from the University State Library of Western Australia, State Library of Western Australia. And we invited people in for the book signing and reading. Now, I offered the girls, because we were all girls, the book was called The Awakened Feminine. I offered them a coaching session on how to read from stage, because what I was worried about was the Muppet style. And we had, there was a group thread that was going, and I had the opportunity to go and meet with one of them. She started to read and I stopped her and went, can I model this for you? Yes. So I started to read it. She picked up on what I was doing and read again. And she went, I can feel the energy rising. I said, yes, and I can see it too. And that was, yes, I've just gone goosey remembering it. Every single one of them did that. And the feedback was phenomenal, because even people who had already bought the book and they brought it along with them to get it signed, they'd all gone, I've got to read all the others now, because you've actually got the voice of the author in your head as you're reading it. And that is so powerful. So powerful.
It becomes a different book, doesn't it? Really? It becomes alive.
Yes.
Because there's an energy connection.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I love to listen to audiobooks. And there is a big difference between having a narration and an author read it, as long as the author's decent. If the author doesn't really manage to convey it, then you'd be better off with a narrator. But there's that extra. extra special bit when it's your words.
Yeah, because you're bringing it to life. I mean, there's not an easy way to put it, a clearer way to put it. You're bringing it to life because you're reliving those experiences. Not only the experience you've written about, but the experience you had when you were writing, because you were reliving it again then. And that's the whole point, isn't it? That you're bringing that life, that energy, that realism into the consumer's life.
Definitely.
That's
And that's the thing.
difference.
I mean, when you've written the book, and I mean, I don't know how you're finding it as you're writing yours, but there's a certain element of catharsis goes on as you're writing your book, because you're reliving those experiences. Now, if you've got through it and come out the other side, and you can pull on the wisdom as you're speaking from stage, and this is where a lot of authors I can find have gone, look, don't get me to speak about this because this is tough. There's often been a traumatic experience, and I know I'm not asking you to go back into that whole experience. And this is where I'm very keen when I work with speakers, because I feel I have a duty of care to work with them to language it in such a way that they can still access some of that emotion and focus then also on the wisdom they've learned, and don't get stuck in the muddy mire. Because when they get stuck in the muddy mire, they re-traumatize themselves.
Yeah,
you can re-traumatize the audience as well, and that's not a good move.
No, I mean, and that is what we do with hypnosis, because I've studied hypnotherapy and conversational hypnosis, and this is what we do. We can, if you like, separate the trauma and wrap it up and put it away. But keep that wisdom, keep the growth, keep the energy, the good energy part of it, but leave that other part behind. But unfortunately, unless you know what you're doing, a lot of people are led straight into the trauma, and they go down that horrible hole again. And we don't need that. We don't need to relive it. It's happened once. That's enough.
Exactly.
Let's take good parts from it. Let's celebrate the good parts. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's one of my skills. I'm also a hypnotherapist in terms of that training. So
that's why we get on so well, because we understand each other.
That's one of the reasons that it's a case of, well, look, let's work on this. I don't want you to get on stage and go through that, because stage is not a position for therapy. You must work through your stuff first. And that's where we do a lot of the work that I do with speakers is around that mindset, around those internal scripts that we tell ourselves. It's back to the stories, isn't it, that we tell ourselves. So, Okay, so you've got the book percolating, and you're looking, from what we've said, before the end of the year?
Yeah, I must make it happen.
Yep. And if it comes out end of November, it'll be in time for the Christmas market. Yeah.
So that's only 3 months. 4 months before. But I'm over halfway through, and the other stuff is just waiting to be put on paper. And I don't know about other people, but I actually like constructing the words. So I'll write things down, and then I'll find the bit I've written down and pull it up and then move them around. To me, it's an enjoyable process.
Well, you're also a wordsmith, aren't you?
Well, I wasn't when I was at school, but I am used. I got used to using interesting language, and again, I think it helped me to have that schooling, being a teacher. The students taught me so much, and then I got interested in the way we think and studied hypnotherapy and NLP and positive psychology and all those types of things. So, it helps to have that background, that interest. But again, it goes back to, I didn't realize it, but all the experiences traveling overland through Africa, communicating with different peoples, going back to when I first started working, when I was going into people's houses and understanding people at levels I never even thought existed. And then before that, when I was very shy, and all that was a benefit, which I didn't see because I wasn't ready to see. Putting in there, yeah. But then one day it all starts to come out, and you think, oh yeah.
Beautiful. So
I can drink this water.
Pulling in then, you've got a book coming. What is it that you're working on at the moment, as well as that? Because you have a coaching program, don't you?
Yeah, I want to get the coaching moving more. There's a lot of what I'm doing is based around self-worth and imposter syndrome.
Okay.
That's a very, very important topic for many people these days. I've got the podcast that I want to talk about happiness and have as, what makes you happy? And then we see where the conversation goes from there. Because I think that's important. People have a very varied view of happiness. What makes me happy may not make someone else happy. And does happiness really give you success, or does success give you happiness? And that conversation can go anywhere. And I think it can be very interesting and very enlightening for the individual to talk in that way as well. So that's going to come out and start working. And again, I think everything is tying down to the view we have of ourselves, which stems from the restrictions, if you like, that have been placed upon us by our upbringing. Because it's, when we were younger, we were free. We could dream this, we could see this, we could do all these things. And then we were told, that's only little people do that. You need to become this way. You need to become this dead person, if you like, inverted commas. And yet, how many people who enter into business and executive world say, think outside the box? I can't. I've been told not to. And now I'm going to be told. It's stupid.
Yeah.
It's stupid, isn't it?
So you've got the coaching program, which is aimed at midlife women.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got
because
the podcast.
I think they are more ready to do the work, because they've realized now that life isn't filling them, giving them fulfillment. It's not giving them that happiness. They sacrifice so much, and yet I'm still no closer to being happy.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
so you've got the podcast, and that will be aimed at
whoever wants to talk about happiness.
You don't have a specific audience. I mean, I'm thinking of guests. Yes,
no,
but
I haven't thought of a specific audience. I think that is wide enough, a big enough subject that anybody can actually pick up. I think.
Yeah. No, the reason I'm thinking about this is because I'm also thinking of networking on your behalf as to who people would want to.
Yeah. Listen,
because obviously the guests will have their specific audience that they're aiming to reach.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I'm asking that question. So we've got a book percolating, we've got a podcast percolating, we've got when are you launching your coaching program?
Well, the website's up, the first page is up, coachstuart.com. So that's up there. People can come and talk to me anytime.
Cool. Well, we're going to put all the show notes. The show notes are going to have the links. Now, audience, this is a dynamic set of show notes. So when we have the date about the book, come back and check, because what I will do is I will put up a post to say that conversation I had with Stuart. Well, he's got this book coming out, and actually we'll probably have you back on just ahead of launch. So that one in mind.
And one of the things which I'm focused on most is my two young children. So they are 7 and 5.5. So I have to be there for them first.
Yes.
This is why the book just got derailed a little bit, because then my eldest went to primary school, and then now we've got the youngest is two months away from being old enough to go to primary school. So he's got to go to a different school for a year. It's a shame, but that's the way the school systems work. So I've got to get there and be focused on them, but they're getting to the stage where they're becoming more independent, not fully yet, but more independent. So it's giving me more freedom to do the book. But it's not that the book is dormant. The book is here.
Oh, yeah.
It's now a question of pulling it out, because I'm seeing more wisdom as I'm talking to you and, sharing with other people. Yeah. So that's a good thing.
Beautiful. Thank you. So I'm going to ask you, how do you embody the written words that you've already got, and the blog stuff and all the other stuff that you've been doing? How do you embody that when you take it from page to stage? It's about sharing the stories and living the lessons. For instance, I don't know whether you had an opportunity to listen, but I did a signature talk, which is
the basis of my TEDx talk. This is going to happen. And as I was talking about it, I was more focused on the lessons and, what you were saying before, take that trauma away, because one of them was, I almost got killed by bees and there's no way I'm going to die. That was my thing. And I realized later that actually I was actually totally in control of enveloping that venom and keeping it at bay for at least 12, 14, 20 hours before I allowed it free, because I had something more important to do than get debilitated by the bees. So that is part of it. And it shows us, shows me the potential we have inside ourselves once we understand the power of our thinking. So that's where the focus is going to be on, the stage, on those types of things. And the stories are just ways of demonstrating it.
Exactly. Les Brown once said, never tell a story without a point, and never give a point without telling a story.
And if you're talking about bees, there's a point there, because they've got a nasty point.
Exactly. Okay, so as we're winding up, is there anything we've missed off, Stuart?
I don't know. I mean, if we listen to this again later, which we will do, we'll probably find, I should have said this, I should have said that. But I think we've covered quite a lot at the moment. And I think the most important takeaway for me and everybody else is just how much possibility we've got inside ourselves. Yes. And it's only when you start talking to someone like yourself that yes, there's another one. Yes, there's another one. These ideas come. And then we understand more about ourselves, how special we really are as individuals.
So we all do have our own unique way of thinking.
Yes, we do. And everyone's got something or many things which are so special and unique to them. They just don't see it because they've been taught not to look for it.
Yeah. So let's look and appreciate ourselves, as well as other people. What was that FLY acronym again? First,
love yourself.
First, love yourself. Thank you very much.
That's as much what you're doing to, when you're helping people go from page to page. You're making them appreciate themselves, and they start loving themselves, and then they look what I did.
Yes.
That's so wonderful.
Pat on the back. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So for now then, Stuart, thank you very much for sharing your from page to stage.
It's my pleasure. It's been wonderful, talking with you.
Bye from us.
Bye.